Yeah, and that's why I told Chuck he couldn't wear dresses to work anymore. So, hi everybody,
That's
what's
true,
up,
it happens.
everybody? Welcome to another episode of
I'm not
Live
speaking
here
to
on
you
Keystroke.
This is how the show ends.
That's right.
now.
Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Scott Moon and Chuck Manley. Chuck is just kind of hanging out for today's show. He's doing his own thing. He's going to be here in spirit and mind, and I am not in Scott's office today. I'm in my own office. I still haven't decorated my walls, and I'm trying to figure out.
You had the bridge at the Enterprise.
Yeah, I did, but the green
good,
screen,
man.
the lights weren't working, and I decided not to screw with it. Whatever.
I did this for the writer's journey because
I like the half.
Walt wanted me to.
The half warp field, half not warp field. It's like Chuck is
weird,
creating a spatial rift in the space-time dimension. What's up, everybody, and the live viewers? Let's see. Tom Hoddle is here. Hello, welcome. Keith Taylor, what's up, dude? Where's Charlie is riding the couch at home today.
Good for you, Charlie.
When's the last? I don't know that he's ever watched.
I'm not sure that's ever happened before.
I can't verify that for sure, but tune in next week when Keystroke Medium presents Tom Hoddle's How the Hell Does This Webcam Work? you first have to plug it in and then you tap it a few times.
Next week you guys are going to be in Vegas.
That is true.
Assuming that airplanes fly.
Yes.
Next week we will be walking around the strip trying not to get lost and taking scenic trips like we did with Steve the last time we were there. What's up, Guy? He's riding the couch today too.
I'm hoping we're going to be more centrally located this time and maybe actually not require as much wandering.
Where is it? Bally's.
And we're actually staying at the hotel this time. We had to scramble. I can't remember if we talked about this last week or not. We had to scramble because the normally where we stay at, my wife's doctor owns a condo like 10 minutes off the strip, and that's where we stayed at the last time, so we don't have to pay for a room. And apparently we got told last minute somebody's staying in the condo, and so we had to scramble to find a hotel room, and there were some cheaper options to go with, but
we should have stayed at Sam's Town just for old
times. Dude, that would have been hilarious.
Where's everybody at?
Come hang out in the central location and we can watch the waterfall.
Yeah. I don't know. There might be worth a small pilgrimage back over there to watch the Eagle show or whatever, what time that goes.
If you've been to 20 Books before, then you know what you're talking about. If you've never been to 20 Books and this is your first time going, you really missed out the last 2-3 times of seeing the waterfall and the animatronics.
The animatronics were tight. and loud.
You're just sitting there's a main atrium in Sam's Town where the bar is, where everybody goes to hang out. And what is it, every 40 minutes or every hour?
I don't know, but it was so loud. You'd be like in the middle of a presentation and you could hear the eagle going,
this like the music starts and this is this epic sweeping, like glorious music that starts, and there's an animatronic bear and a goat and all these things, and then way up at the top of this fake waterfall is this eagle that like does this thing, and it's just ridiculous. And of course last year one of the rooms that was right above it was what is her name? No, I'm losing. She had cardboard cutouts that were pressed up against the window that looked down on the atrium, so it looked like Barack Obama, and I can't remember who else she had up in the room, but it looked like those people were up there looking down on the atrium. So every time somebody looked up and looked at the eagle, they're like, holy crap, is that Obama?
Nice.
Awesome.
We should do a little poll in the group and see who all's going.
We did a couple of months ago.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I think there was a bunch coming. We worked out a get together. Tyler Davis, who's in the chat right now, gave me Showbiz Pizza nostalgia. True.
Oh yeah.
Tyler set us up and hooked everybody up with a reservation at Top Golf. And so we're going to be doing a Keystroke Medium get together at Top Golf, thanks to Tyler.
Fun.
So if you see Tyler, give him a handshake and a slap on the face and say thanks. because that's amazing. We did Topgolf last year, and we may have drank a little bit too much and ate a little bit too much.
True.
And it was a good time. It was a good time.
It was truly fun.
I think Ellen made a post about it in the group. She did, or she's going to. So if you haven't seen that in the group, it should be coming up post haste.
Yeah, there was something there. It's about a 7-minute walk from, how do you say it, Bally's?
Bally's. It's going to be a good time regardless.
Yeah. We'll probably meet up and then walk over there. It'll be kind of like when we walked to the meetup when we went to that, what was it? It wasn't a pizza place. It's some sort of bar and grill. But we walked like a mile and a half, and it was like, everybody stay together or else we're never going to survive this. We can die.
Stay together and hold hands.
Yeah.
Jake Lipton says, a bar crowded with riders sitting in the dark trying to talk to each other. True. That was exactly
talk over each other like I'm doing to you right now.
Yep. That's what happened in the middle. What's up, Patricia? Hello. So we're going to be, what did you say, Scott, talking about complicated and uncomplicated?
Well, I was having a thought today because I'm going down my normal rabbit holes. It's like when you're either designing a plot or you're writing by the seat of your pants, either one is, how you find that point where you make it complicated, the plot and just all the side arcs to be complicated enough to be interesting, but not to the point where it bogs everything down and you're just like falls apart. So I'm at that stage I always have when I'm about 75% through the book where I start feeling like everything is shit and it's so contrived and all of that. And usually it revolves around, I think that my plot is too complicated at this point. But if you keep it too simple, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that might be a possible topic. We can clearly talk about something else if people have better questions to address.
Okay. Well, let's do updates then. Chuck, you want to go with your update today?
Same shit, different day. Your turn.
We should record,
it really is.
We should record one of Chuck's updates and then just replay it.
Just play it over again.
You just roll that with the intro.
Yeah.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
My daughter's one of her teams had their last tournament this past weekend, so I'm out of that one, but she's on this other team. And so I'll be doing that. But I shouldn't have any games or anything for a while, so I shouldn't be having to shuttle people around too much. And that's about it.
Just had their last volleyball. They won third in state for volleyball.
Nice. But hopefully we'll be finishing up Jack Dark here in the next day or two, because I'll get some work done on it after we get done with this. And that's really about it.
Nice.
Did Halloween last night. Made a big pot of soup and stuff, and handed out candy and all that.
We did Halloween last night, and we walked around our neighborhood. Our neighborhood's kind of an upper middle class, like not gated community, but it might as well be gated because you can't. It's surrounded by trees and like thick foliage or whatever. So
heavy landscaping and all
snipers
the paths and stuff. Yeah.
Well, while you're in it, you don't feel like you're in the city, right? You just feel like you're in this completely different part of town, and. So we walked a couple of our streets, and then we went to where even the upper class of our neighborhood is, which has a completely different name, even though it's still in our neighborhood. They're the estates, and we went
bullshit.
Yeah, we went walking around there, and we went with my neighbor and a neighbor behind me. And Josh lives in a hedge maze. It's. I mean,
yeah.
If there was not a more apt description of where I live at,
it's like you can't see the next street from one street because there's tall grasses and wild grasses and trees and bushes and berms and when you're going down kind of like the main road that weaves through it, you can't see more than like one house at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's a nice, like a secluded feeling. Like if you were living in a country secluded, like forest or whatever, you almost feel like that.
If you were living in the Hunger Games and expected to kill to survive.
Yeah, 100%. But anyway, we decided unanimously that next there's so many people out trick-or-treating, and we walked forever. that we decided next year we're going to get a fire pit, and then we're going to grill, and then we're just going to like hand out candy on our driveway and not go walking around.
That's pretty much what we did.
And I did find out though that in my 32 ounce, I think it's 32 ounce tumbler, I can fit 2 Rocktoberfest or Oktoberfest beers in here perfectly, and they stay cold the entire time. And
Those cans are bottles.
Bottles.
Oh my God! So that means they're making smaller bottles. Then just like 12.
I thought it was gonna, you thought it was going to be a golf cart, and honestly, we talked a lot last night about buying a golf cart. Everybody, we were like, we need to buy a golf cart because a lot of people drive down to the golf. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a completely different subject. But let's see. Writing updates. I did 1,300 words, 1,200, 1,300 words on my first chapter of Tranquility 3 this morning. Getting back into that manuscript and pounding out some words this week. We expect to have the book done by the end of the year. Devin's got, I think, 1 or 2 chapters done on his end, and the whole book's plotted out, and I think it's going to be a good story. It's going to be a good cap to the trilogy. I think with any project, there's always the potential of follow-on books, even in series that you think of as trilogies. And so they're not really open loops, but there are open possibilities, if you want to call it that, that we are creating in this book, even though we don't have any plans to write any more after. Let's see, what else? I started listening to This Was Then and That Was There. No, that's not right. It's the next book. That Was Now and This Is Then. It's the next book I have to do for the Bain free radio podcast.
What's the genre for that one?
It's science fiction, and it almost feels like it's a like some kind of temporal deal, because there's a guy that appears to be from the distant past that somehow ends up in the present, and they haven't really, I'm only like 2 chapters in, so they really haven't gone into it in depth and explained anything, and it sounds like from the way things are going that it happens quite often. So I'm intrigued at the possibilities. I just started listening to that this afternoon during lunch.
Those are all the people that aren't on TikTok are probably from the deep past.
Yeah. Hey, TikTok's fun, man. I get stuck on TikTok.
Dude, I hate you for showing me TikTok. It is such a time suck.
Dude, you flip. I'm gonna look at TikTok for 5 minutes, and then 6 hours later.
And 6 hours later.
Yeah. I've been trying to stay away, but it pops up in your YouTube
there
or in
is
your
some
Facebook
funny
feed.
shit on TikTok.
Oh yeah.
There is some funny stuff on TikTok.
I've got a good one planned. I'm gonna do one this afternoon. That's it's the audio is from Office Space, but I'm gonna do it as like an author. It's like where he's talking about, I don't know if I really do a whole bunch of work. I come in about 15 minutes late every day, and then I sit at the computer and I look like I'm working for about an hour. And he's like, in any given day, I think I do about 15 minutes of real work. I'm gonna do that one this afternoon. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
I think
I
there's
haven't actually made one yet. I just watch them.
There's been some studies. I think that's actually probably fairly factual, even though it's comedy.
Yeah.
Something said that in the average 8-hour-a-day job, most employers get about 2 hours worth of work out of their employees.
I could see that.
So you're like, why can't you just let me work 2 hours and go home?
Right.
I mean,
you know how much
let's
more
talk about
productivity you would get out of people?
Yeah, they're like I'll tell you what,
hour?
you give me 3 hours of work and you can leave. Be like, oh hell yeah. You get an extra hour out of everybody.
What about you, Scott? What have you been up to this week, man?
Just lots of kind of, I don't know. I've kind of lost track of all the weird little chores and honey-do list things and stuff, but mostly we've gone to a few meetings about the new house and picking out appliances and stuff, which always makes me nervous because I love that stuff so much. But we did okay, and been doing some writing, a lot of revising. So my word count's a little lower than I wanted it to be. And of course, I'm in that final stretch of Reaper 12 where I've outlined it, but now that I've written the first 75%, I'm like, I need to tweak or change or modify, or I have better ideas for what that line should be. And so now I'm changing some things, and I introduced a couple of little side questy type things that I'm like, this is awesome. And it's also going to make a lot of work for me for the rest of the series because I have to close these loops. So one of the things I'm going to do today in the next couple of days is finish this book and also outline the next 3 books that should conclude this arc for the Reaper. So we'll probably go to book 15 on it and then maybe start a new series. I don't know. We'll see what Jeff thinks about and what the fans think about that arc.
I can't imagine writing 15 books with one.
It's really interesting though. It's really interesting though, because I also am listening to this whole series over because the audiobooks are finally catching up. And so I listen to stuff I wrote, like right now I'm in book 4, Will of the Reaper. And I come across some of the stuff in the background. I'm like, I really like that, and it makes me very happy and makes me more likely to go, because in every book I remember thinking, kind of having some imposter syndrome, like, how can I keep this going? But when I go back and read them, I'm like, I really like it. So apparently it's really not that hard to write that many books, I think, is my conclusion. Coming up with something new is a little bit of a challenge, but
yeah, that's the part I would imagine, because like when I do something like that, I get an idea, and I tend to think in trilogies, and it's like I get the idea for the whole thing in my head, and then there's like the end, the stopping point, and I don't know, I couldn't imagine something,
but it's kind of like
that far.
But it's kind of like life. I mean, you always have a new problem the next day, so your characters can always have a new problem the next day, and you just give them a new thing to deal with, and then they deal with it. And I was pretty happy with myself for Reaper 11 because that was after 10 books, and I was nervous, but I managed to come up with a way I thought was pretty clever to completely reset the entire series, literally to strip him of every single thing he'd gained in 10, but still make you root for him to kind of get it back and find some of his friends. And so far the reviews have reflected that people like it. It's a little worried that it would dive, but it seems to be doing pretty well.
Well, good.
I like the new typography you guys have on the covers.
Yeah, Cheney and what's her name? Our book formatter, Kayla Curry.
Change the cover for book 9?
No, it shouldn't have been changed.
Well, maybe I just don't remember the way it looks. I'm just scrolling through the books. They're always phenomenal covers.
Yeah,
I think my favorite's book 5's cover.
I like book 5. I like actually book 10 a lot.
Bastion.
Yeah, I like that one, and I like, of course, like the new one for book 1 and 11. It's both good. They're from that new graphic art company. So the new covers going forward are from a company that designs game and movie posters or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's
way
cool.
outside of my own budget, but Jeff's got the deep pockets for that type of thing. So those should be cool.
That's very cool.
And then see what else was going on. Oh, just, the normal work and family stuff. It's stressful and distracting, but keep on plugging, keep on trucking along,
right?
Getting things done and whatnot. Planning for next year. So that's about it. That's about it for my updates.
Well, speaking about 15-book series and plots, I think I have experience writing a complicated plot and a non-complicated plot, and I think I had I don't know that it was a more difficult time writing either or, but there's definitely a significant audience difference when it comes to that type of book, like especially in where we are at in our careers and the audiences that we have. When I wrote
space opera and
when I wrote Valor, I wrote it with the intent of making it a fairly complex narrative, in which the reader could go through it a couple of times and pick out different things on the second time that they might not necessarily have picked up on the first time. And I did that very intently, but it also took a lot of planning to get it that way. And I remember looking at my Scrivener project for that and having to go through like multiple iterations of outlines and multiple color coordinated things to make sure that I knew what I was doing in different things. And then of course, I mean, it did fairly well. But the audience that we write for right now is typically different than an audience that would read Valor and enjoy Valor. And there's a bigger audience for the simpler plot, I think, that I've seen anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the more I think some people, they don't want to work too hard. You know what I mean?
The reader,
reading,
you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, the reader. They're reading to relax and to kind of chill out. So they don't, they don't mind thinking about it a little bit, but they don't really want to have to work. Now, some people love that shit, and that's, those are your epic fantasy readers, your big saga readers, those kind of people. But I mean, I think it comes down to just knowing who you're trying to please. But I definitely think you cannot pants a really complicated plot.
Well, and that's the thing, and that is where my stuff gets complicated, is from the pantsing element. So I'll plot it and outline it, but as I'm discovering the book, even using the framework of the plot, because you'll come to a thing where you need something to happen, and I just know it needs to be hard. Like, okay, they have to achieve these objectives, but I can't make it too easy because it's a big deal. And so then the act of making the goal, the thing they're trying to achieve or place they're trying to get hard, makes things complicated. And then these new unknown factors creep in and make things super complicated. And then you have to adjust the story and all of that to it.
Do you find that it's easier to fix those issues like stopping and then going through and like kind of planning out a different, because like sometimes I'll hit issues where like I've plotted it a different way, and when I get to that, when I'm finally in the writing stage, I'm like, this would work a little better if I did it differently, but because I'm doing it differently, it changes the way the rest of the plot works. And that, I think that's why I like plotting out more than pantsing, because I can see a lot of times I can see those things before I actually start like getting 60,000 words into a manuscript and then having to toss 20.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a value to that. And so I have different issues with plotting because I like to plot, but what usually works for me is to write to a point where then as long as you update the plot, I think if you update your outline, so I think everybody should, even if you outline detailedly or a detailed outline, use one, you need to like stop and then go through the rest of your outline and make sure it still goes, make sure you're still aimed at the same thing. Because if you get a little off course, and then, so that's what I usually do. And in fact, a lot of times I don't really outline the last quarter of the book very heavily because I know it's going to need to be so much different. I'll know where I'm going to go, but it won't be as beat by beat for the last half. And then I'll go through and make it more and more detailed as I go. And that helps me with my writer's block too, as I'll be like, okay. And then I will outline the end of the book and that'll break me loose and then I'll be able to finish it. That's been the pattern for me a lot over the last couple of years.
What about you, Chuck?
My outlines are pretty, just plot points. There's not a lot of super amount of detail in them, but they have to be fluid because finished books almost never resemble the initial outline. So I'm all the time going in and tweaking this and changing that. Like I've got this book I'm about to finish. The ending is going to be almost unidentifiable compared to what I thought the ending was going to be.
Right.
But I think that the experience of moving through the story and writing the story, this is going to be better, because it's, there's a difference between looking at your story from the perspective of, hey, this would be cool if this happened. This would be cool if this happened. This would be cool if this happened. And then actually getting in there and getting with the characters and seeing what they say and all that stuff. And then all that minutia suddenly says, well, it might be better over here, and you just have to, actually writing it, I think is different than just sort of thinking about it in the kind of abstract.
Right.
and then it
Well, because it
changes
does
working
change,
on it. Yeah.
right? Because the act of writing it makes you think about what's going to happen next, even if you're so like this. Just to prove a point, this morning, the chapter that I'm writing this morning is an intro to the two of the main characters. They're a married couple, and in our outline it says chapter 2, kin intro, and we have introduced babysitting in it because that's one of the ideas we need in this book, and that's all it was. And so I had to think, like, where is it at? What are they doing? How do I make it interesting? How do I include some of the other stuff that we don't info dump about? And so I spent about half an hour this morning writing down in the document what we could do and what we need to cover. And I figured out we were like at an outdoor cafe for dinner. And how did we get there? Like, because it's a colony and they've been at war. And so now we're in cafes eating dinner. And that's kind of a tonal shift from the other two books. And how do we get there? And so it kind of lets me connect some of the dots that we need to connect to get to the rest of the book. And I jotted down some notes this morning and then just started writing. But there are other scenes where I absolutely need to know what plot points I'm going to do in the chapter ahead of time, and those are things that are outlined. So I think some outline points are like, there's a fight here and this guy wins, and that's my entire deal.
Right.
And then I can kind of play with how does that fight go and what happens with it, like while I'm just specifically working on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ken has a question or a couple in there.
Yeah, which one do you want to hit on?
I think that the last one is asked him to rephrase the earlier question.
Okay.
But I think
this one, how important is completing your outline, even if you've finished the novel for the rest of your series? You mentioned not outlining the last quarter of the book.
Yeah. So I think kind of what we're talking about here is, and I've always considered doing this, is after the book's done to go back and then read it and then basically write the outline from what I see is actually in the book, and then keeping that outline for reference to future books, because I think that because it's going to be more accurate than my initial outline. And so I usually do finish it as I go. Like I said, by the time I get to the last quarter of the book, I've either thrown out what I outlined in detail or changed it so much that it's very different. And then I kind of do the writing like you're driving with the headlights. I outline out ahead of me. I know basically where I'm going for each major flag point or whatever. But like I'll outline like 3 or 4 beats or kind of wherever the spirit takes me on the outline, knowing that I'll probably disregard some of it if it gets too weird. But yeah, so I usually finish the outline, but I also on a pragmatic level, I outline with the blocks, with the brackets in my manuscript. And then what I usually do is I cut those out and I make them a comment where they go. And then I keep one draft with the comments still in there. So I can look at the finished manuscript and all of the comments that have my original plot points. And so I can kind of reference
one of the outlines that I did for Tranquility, because we basically outline the same thing. Let me see, the same way.
Yeah, very similar.
I don't have that one, I don't think. Okay, this is yeah, this is pretty close. This is the almost finished. I think this is the finished outline for what we did. I'm going to try to find examples of the bracket. There we go. Like in the outline, we use brackets to tell each other like things that are not actually in the book. Let me
because the brackets are easy to search for and eliminate when you're cleaning it up for the editor.
Let's do.
And on a side note, when you use the brackets, if you copy and paste it into Dragon Anywhere, it makes them blue instead of black. So like you have this natural headings, and I use Dragon Anywhere sometimes, and that makes it really clean and easy to have that kind of simple outline that way.
So this is from Tranquility. Oh, that is a horrible. How do I make that look better? Let me open it in Firefox. Hold on. Chrome has been giving me some nasty graphical errors with writing, or like with text. It
Not
doesn't look
smoothing
very
it
good.
out and stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's appearing. Well, this looks a lot better. Kind of. Can you guys see that okay, or is it just me?
I mean, I can see it. I mean, it's a little pixelated and choppy, but I can read it.
Let's see if I can make it there.
I'm going to message you a screenshot that you can use if you want of
Oh,
my
yeah,
brackets.
Yeah. So anyway, I use brackets a lot of times to tell my, like, I'll do going to the whatever this place, and then I'll use brackets as we need a planet name, and then I can when it gets to that point, I'll know that I need to do that, or I can just go through and find, because I'll do it in the manuscript too. I'll put brackets in and say, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, cap the bracket, and then just keep writing. And then when you go through and do your edits later, you can find that. You can do it with comments on too, like in Scrivener. I highlight and put comments in, because you can see those on the side. Okay, here's Scott's thing.
I sent you two. And I go back and forth. So the first one, let me come back to where I'm seeing what you guys are seeing. Where are we at here? So the first one is, I think I have the bracketed outline with my beats, my story beats basically, and then like I think my glossary is in the right-hand panel. And then the second one I sent you, I'll have the scene, or like the last several chapters, and then the entire manuscript in the right-hand panel, and then my comments that I've made as I self-edit on the far right.
Okay, let me okay, let's see.
And that's from Reaper 12, so there'll be some spoiler alerts in there.
All right, it's up.
Okay, so I'm going to expand my screen a little bit so I can kind of see what I'm doing. So, so in my outline there, in the first one, you'll see where I have, like my chapter, and I have my beats. The blue is where I've been going through and revising and figuring out things that didn't have enough detail or needed to be changed. So in this part of the story, basically, there's a character named Naaman, who I knew that he had to rely on him. I knew from the outline. I didn't really know why Naaman was that important. I mean, I thought I did, but as I'm writing, I'm like, they could take this guy or leave him. Why are they spending so much time finding him? And so I started going, I need to give him a bigger job and a bigger part of this puzzle. So I basically locked in on that, because Naaman is kind of a mystery character in this new area, and he's been places he's not supposed to be, and he brought something back that's going to help them eventually win. And so, but they have to test it to see if it works. And so they're going to go do some things there. So that's the outline there is rough. On the right-hand panel, as I was self-editing, I kept not remembering names. And so I've been updating my outline or my glossary to make sure I'm remembering stuff. If you look at the next one I sent you, Josh, excuse me. So what I do here is I have my outline up again on the right that I will write in, and then on the right panel is the entire manuscript. So I will, if I need something, I will search that manuscript, and it'll all of the chapters, like looking for a name, or if I forgot how something happened, or if I couldn't remember if he lost his gun or something, I would search for his gun until I found out where he lost it or didn't lose it. And then on the far right is where, and you can't see what some of the comments say, but I was doing a deep, a lot of times I get stuck. I go back to the very beginning of the manuscript and read all the way through, which is time consuming if you're 75% done, because you're talking hours of work just to remember a little detail.
Right.
Yeah. But I do that a lot. And that's how I stay on track. But you can see, like, there's one that says extremely important, and I'd have to click on that to see what that was. But that's something that I didn't feel I addressed that well later in the story, and needed to be developed and gone back to. So that's kind of how I deal with complexity. And it feels really complex, but then when it's actually done and I read it later, it's not nearly that complex. Josh banned himself from the show.
He really did.
I'm really curious to know what he did that was so bad that he had to ban himself. But
he really offended himself.
Yeah.
I'm out here. Die.
So, and then I like to color code the the comments and stuff. And when I'm done, I will export this to Word with the comments saved in it, and I'll keep that just for future reference. And just kind of a lot of, I feel I spend the most time on in a series that's this long. I spend the most time being my own kind of lore master and trying to figure out, so when I go back and listen to the earlier Reaper books, there's lots of tiny little things that could have been their own story. And I'm like, oh man, I bet people wonder about that character. Could I work them into this new story?
Right.
And so when we started talking about why I feel it gets complex, is that's how you make a really long series, is because you need more material. And so you start adding in extra characters or side quests, or they go to a new world, and that takes a lot of time, and it's interesting. But everything that you add is a potential side quest, or it's a loop that needs to be closed. And you want to close enough of the loops that people are satisfied.
And do you just kind of, you said you just kind of keep a world Bible as you go?
Yeah. And my world Bible is literally being able to search the entire series through Scrivener at one time for stuff.
You've got every book in your Scrivener project, right?
I usually do. I don't, I think I have the first 10 in one Scrivener, and then everything after that in this now, because it does kind of bog down when you get 700,000 or 800,000 words in a Scrivener project.
Yeah, it's a pretty big file.
But so that's
easier than doing
thing.
a Word document for sure.
Oh yeah,
Word would crash for sure, 100%. But so that's why I was talking about complexity, and I mean, there's lots of side things with that, because as I'm finding going through the series, there's lots of small things, loops that were open and questions that were never closed, and nobody's complained about them. But I'm like, how many of those can you get away with?
Yeah.
And how many of those are basically they're kind of a type of red herring, or they're minimally closed. Like in The Last Reaper, in the first couple of books, Dr. Hastings is one of the characters' father, and he's kind of a bad guy. Well, he goes back to the Union, but then since they leave Union space, you never hear from him again. And you would think he's kind of an important character, but he's not really. And nobody has complained that we haven't heard from Dr. Hastings in 11 books. So I don't know. I sometimes I doubt myself, and I wonder how much complexity is too much. And if you can't avoid being very complex if you're writing 15 books.
I used to think that to be able to write even a longer book, because before I wrote Terra Nova, my longest book was like 50,000 words. And I think Terra Nova ended up being like 70 or 80,000, 85,000 or something like that. And even with Valor, I had this issue too. And I'm just now, while working on Tranquility and now Weaponized, have realized that in my effort to, and I'm sorry about the color. I don't know why the color is shifting around me. It's doing some weird stuff.
I thought I was having a stroke. House.
No, I don't know what's going on. The camera's doing weird things.
Rave party down there.
I was confusing in depth for complex.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to make my novels bigger and better by making them more complex, and thinking that adding those layers of complexity is what would make them really good, and how I would, expand the length of the novel, so I would have full novels and not just novellas and different things like that. But as I've come to realize, it's the in-depth writing, where like instead of doing a scene of two people having a conversation that lasts for 500 words, I stretch that to make it 1,500 words or 2,000 words, and add depth to the conversation. Like they do more things in the scene than just having a conversation. For instance, this opening scene that I have here, I'm 1,200 words into it. There's stuff going on. You're learning stuff about the planet. You're learning stuff about the growth of the colony, but the conversation they're having, or throughout the beginning of this opening section, really doesn't mean anything. It's just two people talking. And
yeah, but I mean, during all that though, I mean, you're throwing in character building. You can throw in world background. I mean, there's a lot of building blocks you can put into something like that.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like I'm making it more than just the conversation that they need to have.
Right. That's what you're saying.
And you know, in an outline where you like talking about a less complex outline, Weaponized is not complex. In Weaponized, the guy is a soldier. He gets captured. He becomes a kind of a gladiator / slave, like the movie Gladiator. And then we have to figure out how he's going to get off this big, secure gaming asteroid complex. That
Yeah.
it's not that complex, but I'm I'm adding in depth on like how is he doing it, the other characters, what they're involved in, and stuff like that. And that is, I mean, I think I'm 40,000 into
Well, I mean,
it.
and again, I think you hit on it. It's the difference between depth and complexity. I think when you talk about plot complexity, to me, that really boils down to how many questions do you have open?
That's exactly right.
You know, if
Plot
you've
is
got
about questions.
Yeah, plot's about questions and making sure you give them the proper answers, you know,
Right.
that by the end of the book, the reader's satisfied with the answers to all those questions. If you've just got one or two, like, how is this guy going to get off this moon? And is the evil overlord going to feed him to the Sarlacc? That's nice and simple. But if you've got like 3 different point of view characters and each one of those has 4 different questions going on in their life, and you know, that's complexity. That's because every time you add one of those questions, that's one more thing you're asking your reader to keep up with.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and some people just don't want to do that. They just
Well, that
don't.
goes back to Scott's point about the reader not wanting to do the work. Again, Valor,
Yeah.
there was a lot of things that happened in Edge of Valor that if you didn't pick up on when you're reading it, something that happened later on in the story might not make any sense. And I realized that was it. While interesting to some readers, a lot of readers are going to get to that point and go, I don't understand how this happened. Because
that's how on the nose you need to be about some points and other points.
Right.
Because like we were talking about movies, I can't remember if we're talking about the show or just in a conversation, but like my hearing is a little bit jacked up, and so I will miss some dialogue from time to time, and that will screw me all up because I'll be like for example, when I watched the new Dune, what was really the most distracting for me was that Paul and Jessica weren't putting on their still suits. But they had the Frem kit, and there was like 5 scenes in a row, and every scene, all I could think about is why won't they put on their fucking Frem suits, or the still suits? But then the second time I listened to it, I heard a little bit of dialogue,
just
where it's
real
like,
fast.
We don't have the still suits, and then that made everything different. But I didn't. I mean, even if I was trying really hard, I couldn't have got that information until I went back and listened to the dialogue again.
Yeah.
So it can be very frustrating, but the thing is I kept going because there was enough, the overall story arc and presentation was enough that I was willing to suffer through that and move on.
Yeah. I think if you look at not just in our genres that we like, but just overall in books that sell, like mysteries, romances, thrillers, all of those are pretty simple plot wise. You know, there's not a ton of open questions in those things. So, you know, I think that speaks a lot to what the majority of readers kind of want.
Right.
You know?
Well, like I said, it's especially in the area we write. I mean, we write mill sci-fi, but we also write, for lack of a better word, indie mill sci-fi. And indie mill sci-fi is completely different than like a Brad Thor military thriller, right? Like it's not the same thing. And the readers that we're writing for are reading books for entertainment and not as a sleuth, as it were, right? They're not trying to pick out the different things in a book.
You're not writing whodunits that people want to figure out before the end.
Right.
I think those would be really hard.
I do want to write one of those.
Oh, same. 100%. You know, and with, I think it's something that I'm intently trying to do with Weaponized is make it a simple, man, that's going to make me have a seizure. Why is it doing that? Write a simple outline and a simple, straightforward plot that doesn't have flashbacks or different scenes that you've got to pay attention to where you're at. And, you know, it's a linear story.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, what's Can you guys think of the most complex story you've ever written?
Written?
Mm-hmm.
The most complex, if we're not talking about, I mean, I enjoyed it, the writing, but the most complex, not necessarily good, I've written was my SMC Marauders series, because there were lots of important characters. I mean, by the time I finished the third book, I mean, there might have been 20 people that I really liked and cared about, and that made it really hard to. It made it really complicated, even though they were all kind of going towards the same objective. So I guess it depends how you look on that.
I would probably say my Paragons trilogy, because I tend to skew towards the simpler storylines anyway.
Right.
But that one, I spent a lot of time with villains. So there were really, there was a lot more characters and that sort of thing. So over the course of that entire trilogy, yeah, it was probably one of the more complicated things I've ever written.
I don't know that I ever want to write another book as complicated as Valor was.
They're a lot more work, aren't they?
Oh my god!
You worked on the concept of that for years before you started writing, so that had to be complex.
Yeah, like, and I don't have. I mean, probably 6 years before I actually started writing the book is what went into the completion of that book, and I definitely don't have that amount of time to come up with some. But then again, like reading, I know I mentioned it before, the Gray Man books by Mark Greaney. Those are straightforward books, and
they're not
of
complex
times,
at all.
There's zero complexity to those books, and you even know the bad guys' motivations, as well as the good guys' motivations for the most part. You know, back and forth.
Those are straight up action adventure, man.
100%. It's more about the how than the why.
Right. Exactly.
It's showing the action basically.
Oh, thanks, Ken. Ken says Edge of Valor was worth the effort. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And well, actually, the Gray Man series, the way those books were written is how I'm trying to write the Weaponized series. It's just kind of straightforward, even though there's not really a villain. Like there are bad guys, and a lot of people are going to get killed by the end of the book. But there's not like a named villain. Like there's no like Riddler or Two-Face or anything like that. So it's even more straightforward than really having to have like motivation for a bad guy.
The plot for the Gray Man, at least I haven't read the whole series, but the few books I've read is not hard to guess what's happening next.
Oh yeah.
And so what makes it entertaining though is how much you care about the main character, which I think I cared about him more in the second book than I did in the first book. Because the first book, I remember I had a lot of complaints about it. And then the presentation and hitting all those key emotional triggers that keep you tied in. And that's the thing I think makes most writing fail is when you miss the emotional triggering. Trigger sounds like such a dumb word given how it's used today, but really if you don't get that emotional reaction, then the book is worthless no matter how good your plot is.
Right.
I will say though that I can't remember what book it was in, but they, in the first like 3 or 4 or 5 books, the answer to why I can't even remember what the main character's name is now. Gentry.
Gentry.
The reason why Gentry is being chased by the CIA is never really known. Like all the characters are like, you killed your whole team, but like when you're in Gentry's head, you know that he didn't. So like the whole time you're like, so what actually happened?
So what happened, right?
and so that's like built up. There's a mystery behind it, but it's not like super complex. You're just like nobody really knows, and everybody higher up are like, come on, man, you know you killed your whole team. Like they're 100% in on that. Well, then when you get to book 5 or 6 and you actually figure out, and then he figures out what happens, it was complex. But because it had been built up over 5 books and you understood the characters over 5 books, the complexity was super easy to understand. And then everything made sense. And you're like, holy crap, that was an amazing like
Yeah.
reveal, because most of the series is not complex. Most of the series is just he's got to go from A to B to C, and he's got to get this stuff done. And the books
Without dying.
are
Try not to die.
how he's going to get it done, not the why. And then when there's a big why in the middle of the series, and you figure out the answer to that why, I think that was more impactful, because the series itself, the books themselves, are the how. And so the flip on the
he had that standing question through 5 books.
Right.
So that's really interesting, and that makes it much more accessible, simple language. What we're talking about complexity is the more whys you have, the harder it's going to be to follow.
yes.
But you need a certain, like maybe you need like 3 whys, and some of them are more important than others.
Right.
Like you got the big why that takes 5 books to answer. You got the medium whys that take like 1 book to answer.
Yeah.
Right.
And then your little whys that kind of get you through some of the scenes, but not too many. And then everything else is kind of like, okay, he's in a tree and the tree's on fire and I'm throwing rocks at him. And what the fuck is he going to do about this?
Yeah.
And then make it somewhat believable and interesting and unique and stuff.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like those immediate questions that need to be answered. What's he going to
Yeah.
do about getting out of the burning tree with rocks flying at him? But then you've got that kind of background question of, well, what did happen to his team? And, you know,
Right.
you don't bring that up all the time so that it's like dominant in the reader's mind,
Right.
but just every once in a while, so that when you do finally answer, you know, it'll keep them interested. And then when you do finally answer it, like Josh said, it's super satisfying.
I would really like to talk to Mark and figure out if he knew ahead of time what actually happened and how that twist happened, or if he just figured it out when he started writing.
As he
that
went,
book.
yeah, I would be curious to know that too.
Because there's a couple books that really don't touch on it at all, and it's known and it's understood, obviously, because some of the antagonists are CIA contractors, and so like they're in the know, right? And they know that
I wish we
Court
could
did
get that
this.
answer, because it'd be cool to make a bet on it. So let's just
Yeah.
pretend that he's going to answer our question. Who bets that he did know and who bets that he didn't really know?
My bet is that he didn't know
That's
until
what I
he
do.
started writing.
I would have to go with that too.
That's me
think
too.
I think that he probably knew in his head that he had to figure it out
Right.
at some point, but he just kind of let it lie until it came to him.
Because
Yeah.
his focus is building that character and building his kind of legend, and that sounds really good. But
Right.
you don't need to know why at that point. And so
I
since
catch
we all three
myself
agree,
doing that too.
we all three agree, we can pretty much assume that we're right and that that's
yes,
fine.
of course.
I need to get him on the show. I need to
have a
get him on the show
consensus.
and talk to him about
He'll
it.
be like, "You stupid assholes! What the fuck are you talking about?"
And if you haven't read The Gray Man, like, they're not mill sci-fi, they're not science fiction at all. They're modern day thrillers.
They're modern day thrillers. And if you like action, you can't go wrong.
And I've said this before, you can skip the first book if you read the Wikipedia article on the first book.
I would recommend.
I like the first book. Scott didn't like it. I liked the first book.
I had a few issues with it, but overall, I thought it was.
I hated it so bad I can't even explain how bad I hated it. I can't
but
believe
you
I read the
hated it
second
as
one.
a writer, right? You hated it as a writer because there was a lot of things in that book that, as writers and writers that have written more than one short story in their life, we can see the writing problems in the book.
Exactly.
I would not have done that because this is how you should write this.
And I tried
but
not
as a
to.
reader,
I tried not to see it, but I just couldn't. I just.
Oh, I know.
And I don't normally go into things to analyze them for writing,
right?
Until it's like the second or third time I've watched a movie or read a book.
Yeah,
but,
me neither.
Oh my God. I would call Josh and I'd be guilty. I would hesitate, send 4 hesitation texts before I just complained about how shitty this book was that he loved so much. I'm like, I know you love it, but I want to die and I can't read any more of it. It's so terrible. And then I read the second book. I'm like, this is damn good. I love it.
Yeah, the second one was definitely better. I've only read the first 2, and the second one was definitely better.
Yeah, I'm curious, if anybody does read it, or if you guys continue reading the series, I'm curious to know, to learn your reactions to that twist.
Now I kind of want to pick it up again.
Yeah.
Because it was so, like I'm saying, it was so impactful that most of the other books don't have those twists. That they kind of, they have small twists, but not as impactful as this to the main overall story. And I'm wondering your guys' thoughts on that, because it's an interesting technique that if you tried to do it purposely in your series and you're looking at trying to make this big thing that's overarching kind of deal. How do you build that without just beating a dead horse every book while you're trying to do something about it?
Right.
So it's an interesting lesson in what it takes to write a long series, and that your story arc or your big question reveal. Because like when we did Reaper, we planned a 5-book story arc, and so we did 2 5-book story arcs. Now we're doing a third 5-book story arc. But you can't have a story arc that goes 15 books because people would never wait 15 books to get the answer.
Sure.
100%.
But I also think that we should get T-shirts, and we should have a Team Josh or Team Scott on your reaction to the first book of The Gray Man.
Yes.
See who liked that or hated that the most.
I would be willing to bet that everyone would be on Team Scott. All of the viewers of this show.
Well, like I said, though, I
probably be
didn't
on.
hate it. I just there was a few things I had to call bullshit on.
Well, it was like
But
like
again,
watching,
writer's eyes, you know.
Yeah,
it's like the comparison for me is like a lot of the book is like a Jason Bourne type movie. This is the comparison I'm gonna make. The first like 70% of the book, like a Jason Bourne movie, like Jason Bourne, the first one, the Bourne Identity, and then the back like 25% is like the last Rambo, the movie they made, and he's like sending arrows through people's bodies and like blowing people up with a 50 cal and like
walking away from damage that
ridiculous
human being, no matter how tough you are, you're not walking away from that.
It turned into a Marvel movie where you get blown up in a car.
That's a good way
and
to
then
put
you're
it.
Fine.
Yeah. He's suddenly Captain America.
Exactly, 100%.
You know?
Yeah, the biggest problems I had was with the antagonist points of view in the first book.
Yeah, I didn't like those either.
Yeah, I didn't like any
think
of
you
that.
could have done away with those. But again, that goes to the complexity of the book, because he wasn't making a complex book. You knew in the first like 30 pages probably who the bad guy was and why he was doing what he was doing for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then throughout the series, you get a lot of the antagonist viewpoint, and even the second book is I'm gonna have to look, because I can't
remember.
There was Deadeye is the third book, I think.
The second book is much better, and the second book I liked because you quickly realize
on target,
yeah, and he winds up in a situation that you can imagine being in that situation would be really stressful.
Yes,
where he's at in the second book, you're like, oh yeah, no, nothing good is going to come of this.
Well, and the second book starts out with, well, so does the first book. I mean, the first book, like there's a chopper literally blowing up above him when the first book starts, and the second book starts out pretty much. I think all the books start out with a bang. Book 4, so there wasn't really any twist that I can remember, like significant twists in book 2 and 3. They were pretty straightforward. House a twist comes in book 4 that it wasn't a significant twist, but it was an interesting twist. Book 5, Backblast, is where the big flip comes from his reveal from the past, and then the rest are all pretty straightforward too.
That brings up an interesting point. You talking about twists, because it's no matter how simple a plot is, a really good twist will make a reader forgive a lot of sins.
Right.
I mean, a really good twist will just like, it's like a flashpoint of interest for a reader.
It's dangerous though.
Yeah, you got to be able to deliver on it.
You'll pull it off, then you
got to be able to deliver on it. But
do you guys remember the movie Frailty?
Oh, I love that movie.
I'm not sure if I've seen it.
So I just watched it again last night, and that twist is probably the most interesting. So there's kind of two twists in that. Man, it's been out for a while, so I kind of want to spoil it, but I don't want to spoil
that movie.
Been out since 2001.
You think that the main character, Matthew McConaughey, is this brother, and then when you get to the end of the movie, he's the other brother, and then you see that everything that he's been portraying as crazy throughout the entire movie is actually true.
It's true. God, it's a good movie,
and it's such a great movie, and it's one of those movies where the twist at the end is you might have seen coming the brother twist, but the twist that everything was true on
was
top
real.
of it was
Yeah.
like that was good. That
Yeah, I
was
gotta watch it.
excellent. It's a pretty good movie.
My list of
really
unwatched
enjoyed it.
movies I need to watch is getting longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. So anyway, good conversation.
I dig
Great
it.
conversation. I'm trying to think of another twist that I've come across in the last couple of years that was
I remember
really,
pretty
really
well.
good
I mean,
twist.
like I remember The Prestige had a pretty good one. Do you remember that one?
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
that had a good twist, and then
Yep.
of course I think the classic is Seven. You know,
So,
that
yes.
last scene with the box.
Yes,
that was the twist.
And I think the crazy thing about that movie is, even though that movie doesn't have a happy ending, I think that movie had the biggest like
Absolutely
closure, like circular closure of
Yes.
any story that
It
I've
was
ever seen, because
so well done.
it ended in a way that impacted the story, and the bad guy basically won, and you're like, all that happened in just one scene, and you're like, holy crap.
I just remember sitting in the theater just staring at the screen like, wow.
Yes.
That was really well done.
And how much guts does it take to pull off a story like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The nice thing about that movie is it has effects on the next movies you watch after it, because you're like, because most of the time, let's face it, you know the good guys are always going to win and certain people are never going to die. But you watch that, and then for like the next couple of years, you're always a little bit worried, like maybe they won't make it. Maybe this is another Seven.
Yeah, well, that's where you get. That's where you eventually get stuff like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, where you never know if anybody's safe at all.
Yeah, but and the thing that works with Seven that I don't know would work with every movie if you tried to do a twist like that or an ending like that is the tone of Seven was the same all the way through.
Yeah,
like if you had a happy ending at Seven, I don't know that it would have been a great movie, because the tone of that movie was just like, you felt like you were being gut punched the entire time, and you're like, I don't want to ever go to New York.
It was always raining. It was always casty.
Just a really
crowded city. I mean, they did such a good job of setting that feeling of
right.
The tone was there.
But if you did that like on like another cop movie, if you did that like on Die Hard, that it wouldn't work with Die Hard, because the tone with Die Hard is completely different than
totally different.
And I know it's an investigation of Die Hard's an action movie, but I'm just talking about like the general tone of the movie.
Dearly Departed, or was it The Dearly Departed or The Departed?
Yes, The Departed.
That was very similar. In a really dark, scary tone, and it ends badly for everyone, basically. But that's an excellent movie as well.
So I like The Departed, but where I might differ on you is that, like, I didn't feel like the ending of The Departed, where both of the Leo and what's his name die at the end. Like, I did not see that coming. And while I didn't see it coming in Seven, and like it was a great ending, in The Departed, I didn't feel like it was like a desperate situation all the way through. Like, I felt like if Leo would have won out, like solved the case and been good, I think the movie still would have been okay. Like, if Leo hadn't died,
it had better. Yeah, it would have worked. That would have worked better for that than it would have for Seven. But yeah. Well, yeah. I watched The Departed a couple of times, and it was enjoyable all times.
Let's see. Kid says M. Night Shyamalan. Thing about his earlier movies is, despite his reputation, they are good movies even without the twist. So, talking about twists, Sixth Sense was amazing. I love the twist in the Sixth Sense. The Village. The first time you watch The Village, the twist is like, aha, that was interesting, right? I hated The Happening. I don't remember anything about The Lady in the Water.
Yeah, neither one of those was very good. I enjoyed Unbreakable.
Unbreakable was good. I like that a lot better than Mr. Glass. I didn't really like, what was the tie-in movie with that? The one the one where he had multiple personalities.
Crazy guy, yeah. Switch or something? No.
I can't remember. I like Signs. I like the ending to Signs.
I like Signs. It was
Signs was okay.
It wasn't the
Um,
greatest twist in all of all his movies, but it was pretty interesting.
People were
I
just
didn't
trying
like
to get me
I didn't like the presentation of the twist. Like I didn't like the prophecy. Basically, like it wasn't a prophecy, but like basically his wife said these things, and then
Swing
he
away.
interpreted it.
Right. He
Like,
tried to put that mystical
Swing
spin
away.
on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
No,
I didn't really like that. I think if they could have left that part out, and then they figure out a way to figure out the waters everywhere, because they probably could have done that. I mean, they probably could have left out that
Absolutely.
mystical swing
Absolutely.
away, and just work that in a different way.
Yeah,
If they
but to
were-
me, the fundamental problem with Signs was these aliens have the technology to get from there to here, but they can't know that 2/3 of what covers our planet is going to kill them.
Right.
I was like, that was my disconnect right there.
Probably could have gone someplace else.
Yeah.
Mars
Pretty
would have
wet.
been okay for them.
Where's
Maybe
Arrakis?
okay.
We need to go to
Yeah,
Arrakis.
we can go the desert planet, or why they didn't just land in the desert.
Yeah, or something,
stay from
right?
the water. And I'm getting ready to watch Old because people keep telling me to watch it, but I haven't seen it yet.
I almost watched that the other day, but basically instead of now for every M. Night Shyamalan movie, before I watch it, I just go and read the IMDb or the Wikipedia and just read the entire plot. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't watch that movie." So when
Maybe
you
I
watch
should.
it, I'm interested to see what you think about it when you watch it.
Patricia Gilliam says, "Aliens, let's land on the 75% death planet."
Exactly. That was the whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking, really? You're too stupid to live then.
Yeah.
Got what you had coming.
Maybe they didn't. Maybe the aliens didn't like those aliens. Like, these are like the like outlaws are trying to escape, and they're
Right.
just
That would be
desperate.
like
Like
us going
Earth
to a
is
planet with
Australia.
oceans of arsenic or something, just
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Of course,
wouldn't
if
work.
you've been traveling across the galaxy for 4,000 years and you finally find a place you can land on, you're probably like, fuck it. Let's just see what will work.
Yeah, they just really had to pee.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
I gotta go. I can't wait. That's probably a good cue to end the show on because I'm going to need to
They really had to
do
pee.
that myself. Let's be honest.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us today on this fantastic Monday afternoon. Kit, Tom, Patricia, Guy, Ken. Oh, and everybody give Ken a big, huge round of applause for maintaining our show notes for
Thank
our
you,
show
Ken.
and the
You're
Ryan
a good
It's the
man.
best.
He does a phenomenal job on that. Next week, we may or may not have a show. We may just have we'll go live and just hang out for a few
Maybe I'll
minutes.
just get on and read dirty limericks out loud.
Oh,
for
there
an
you
hour.
go.
Yeah.
I could do that.
You remember the last show you did when we were in Vegas 2 years ago? You were like, look, guys, this isn't going to be a great show. They're in Vegas. I'm just here doing the
Did
show.
I do that, or are you making that up?
Oh, you did it. Like,
I did?
And I think that's
Was
on-
I
if you go-
drunk?
Probably. If you go to our YouTube channel and you watch the highlight video, like that's part of the highlight video is your
Is it
opening.
really?
Yes.
I
go
don't
watch it. It's
remember
hilarious.
that at all.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
We're just
I'm
going
gonna
to
have to look that up.
show pictures of us walking around Vegas throwing up every place. I drink like once a year and it's in Vegas, and so it's usually pretty ugly.
Right, exactly. So we may or may not be. Well, that's not any different from any other show. We may or not be here. May or may not be here next week for a live show. If we are, we'll be doing it live.
I kind of feel like
from,
we should do one
Vegas.
now.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we have to do one.
Well, 100%. Time and date to be determined. But thank you everybody for hanging out with us on today's live. And if you're listening on the audio feed, come hang out with us on Mondays ish, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. And we'll be back next week ish with another episode where we talk about some reading and some writing and everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Peace.
Later, guys.